This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. What if comparing car insurance rates was as easy as putting on your favorite podcast? With Progressive, it is. Just visit the Progressive website to quote with all the coverages you want. You'll see Progressive's direct rate. Then their tool will provide options from other companies so you can compare. All you need to do is choose the rate and coverage you like. Quote today at Progressive.com to join the over 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
This podcast is brought to you by Slate Studios and SAP. AI is moving so fast. If you don't get reliable and relevant advice, your business might miss out. Welcome to Dear Artie, an advice column from SAP, where we tackle the tricky questions at the intersection of AI and business. Let's meet our expert.
Hi, I'm Ian Khan. I'm a technology futurist, speaker, and author, and I love to help organizations measure their current state of readiness for an AI-driven world. I'm excited to dive into today's question.
Dear Artie, our finance team is top-notch, but small. How can AI support them? Signed, Financially Drained.
Well, financially drained, a lot is happening in finance and AI, and the possibilities are endless. First of all, AI can help your finance team analyze massive amounts of financial data faster than any human or a team of people could do. Second, it can help perform functions on data through algorithms. This can connect different systems together and really simplify decision-making for your finance team. And last but not least, AI can help reduce the time needed for data to provide insights so that your leaders can make faster decisions.
Embrace AI with confidence. Head to sap.com/AI to learn more.
The following podcast includes explicit language, including, well, you'll just have to wait and see. Hi, I'm Stefan Fatsis, and this is Hang Up and Listen for the week of July 29th, 2024. On this week's show, the Paris Olympics. We'll start with the Dream Team's opening game in pool play, a 26-point blowout win over Nikola Jokic and Serbia. Then, Slate contributor Rebecca Schulman joins us to talk about Simone Biles' mini injury during qualifying and how it might affect her and Team USA. Finally, the first big scandal of the games, in which our polite and deferential neighbors to the north turn out to be drone-flying cheaters. I'm the author of Word Freak, A Few Seconds of Panic, and Wild and Outside. I'm in Washington, D.C. In Palo Alto, California, it's Slate staff writer Joel Anderson. He writes the column Emotional Investment and has hosted 3 slow burns, the most recent of which was the 2023 Podcast of the Year. Sup, Joel?
Hey, man. Good to see you, Stefan. Glad to be back without our boy Josh, RIP.
Glad to be back. And just in case people hear my voice, it's because I've got COVID. Got it at the North American Scrabble Championships last week. Came home with COVID.
Like a true American, you're playing through the COVID,
I am. And with us from Ajax, Ontario, it's Morgan Campbell. He's a senior contributor at CBC Sports and the author of a new memoir, My Fighting Family, Borders and Bloodlines and the Battles That Made Us. Back-to-back appearances on the show, Morgan. You're almost eligible for a Hang Up and Listen lapel pin.
I'm holding out for a T-shirt and or a coffee mug. Been on the run the last 2 or 3 days, but I did make time, Stefan, to watch on my phone at halftime of a book festival, the first half of Canada men's basketball's win over Greece. I'm sorry that Canada had to do it to you.
You didn't have to bring that up. You're a guest.
Yeah, seriously. I've got COVID, man. You're gonna bring up Giannis losing?
Morgan, come
Pool
on.
play. We've got time. I want to talk about this a little bit more when we talk about basketball.
Right. And also, Stefan, I mean, we should talk about something else. What was the Scrabble Nationals other than a super spreader event?
Yeah, other than a super spreader event, it was my daughter, man. Chloe finished 4th in Division 1 of Nationals. She is now the 15th highest rated Scrabble player in North America. Wow. She went 20-11 in the tournament. She was in the hunt to make the best of 5 finals until the pretty much the very end on the last day. And it was just inspiring and gratifying, and among many proud moments that I've had watching my kid turn into a superstar in her chosen sport. And shout out to the champion, 24-year-old Mac Meller. He was a child prodigy. Mac was an expert player at age 10, He has finally won his first very much deserving title. Don't ask how I did, though.
Oh, well, okay, I won't. But so it sounds like Scrabble is a young person's game now is what it is.
Well, Mac's opponent in the finals was a 58-year-old internist from Florida, Ian Weinstein. 76-year-old Joe Edley, one of the main characters in Word Freak, finished in the top 10. So for some people who have the gift and the ability and have put in the work, you can keep it going into your older years. Others, like me, seem to struggle. But hey, I'll bounce back. I've had a few bad tournaments in a row. I'll be back. But Chloe, man, I am so proud.
Yeah, congratulations, Chloe. That's amazing, man. It must be nice to, if somebody's going to surpass you, it might as well be your daughter, right?
Absolutely. I kind of feel like, I don't know. Maybe I'm like, Jelly Bean Bryant, right? Cup of coffee, not too bad a player. Rest in peace, Jelly Bean. But you produce a Hall of Famer, and Chloe is going to be a Hall of Famer in this.
Plus, Stefan, you were sick, so the next tournament, you'll be healthy. You'll be sharper.
Hope so.
He got
back on
sick
top of your
there.
game.
I don't know
Don't
if
worry
he was
about
sick
that.
there. He got sick there. I don't know.
I got sick after. I can't say I was sick when I was playing, man. Now, as always, we want to thank our Slate Plus members for making the show possible. One way we do that is with a bonus episode. This week, Joel, Morgan, and I will talk about the utterly over-the-top but extremely cool, star-studded, and suddenly controversial Olympics opening ceremony and other moments from the first weekend of the games. You can hear that episode right now, as long as you're a Slate Plus member. Subscribe by going to Apple Podcasts and clicking Try Free at the top of our show page, or visit slate.com/hangupplus to get access wherever you listen. On Sunday in Lille, the Dream Team opened its quest for a 5th straight Olympics gold medal and the U.S. men's team's 17th gold overall. The Dreamers blew open a close game in the second half, led by who else? LeBron James and Kevin Durant, who combined for 44 points on 17 of 22 shooting.
From LeBron. You still got to put points on the board. Curry, stop it. Oh, no, look away. Don't you do that. Don't you do that, Steph. A perfect finisher. The United States get it done. Curry in style. And the final score, USA 110, Serbia 84.
Morgan, on the bonus episode of this podcast last week, you said that the Dream Team has twin objectives: to win and to entertain. They won pretty easily against 3-time NBA MVP Nikola Jokic and his countrymen. Were you entertained?
Yeah, there was entertainment in the sense that that first quarter was kind of tight. And there's still some things that the U.S. team is still working through, because their training camp started a little bit later than everyone else's. And regardless of how good these guys all are as individuals, it still takes time. Like, this is one of the things I noticed even watching Canada play. Canada lost to the U.S. in one of the warm-up games, but there's a continuity there because there's a group of guys on that team that have played together internationally, age group ball all the way up, and their training camp started maybe a week and a half earlier than the U.S.'s did. So the U.S., for all its top-end talent, even as this tournament starts, is still working on some continuity. And if you're a U.S. fan, you have to be encouraged by the fact that, one, it's entertaining to see old man Kevin Durant come in off the bench. His calf is finally healthy. He comes in, lights it up. And also the fact that they're able to do that and win over Serbia by 26 points without playing Jason Tatum. Because again, as we discussed a week ago on the bonus episode, the one thing that can slow down Team USA is the fact that so many of its best players are on the wrong side of 35. And so the more you can win without playing your best players, the better that bodes for them as this tournament progresses.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing about Jason Tatum is that it seems like he's not playing because they don't consider him to be among the best players in that rotation, which is fine. in 2024. 2028, it kind of makes you worried, like which going to be the generation that steps up after that. But, and I kind of thought of Sunday's performance as sort of typical of the recent iterations of the U.S. men's team. Like, some days they're going to be locked in and they're just going to pull away. Some days they're going to jump out to an early lead, get bored, and let teams back into the game. That's kind of what happened with Germany and I think South Sudan and some of in the exhibition part. And then some days they're just going to find themselves in a dogfight, no matter what. Like, the days of beating teams by 60 are over. Like, that's just not going to happen anymore. And I was listening to the Ball Don't Lie podcast, and they were just talking about how this is probably the most competitive men's international tournament of all time. Like, everybody has so many NBA players. Like, I mean, again, we'll talk about the Canadian basketball team in a little bit, but like, you just didn't have teams with that much NBA talent before. And so, like, as good as this team is, and I really do think in terms of like man for man, roster for roster, Stefan, like, this team is better than the 92 Dream Team, maybe as good as the 2008 Redeem Team, but it doesn't really matter because, well, it does matter because they need every bit of talent that they have, because it's going to take that to win. Like, as the games get tougher, as you get into the, single elimination portion of it, Germany, Serbia again, Canada, all those teams are going to be good enough to beat them.
Well, the one thing that the U.S. has learned is that you can't take this for granted at all anymore. Look, they have not dominated international play in recent years, even with lineups of NBA stars. They do not win the World Cup routinely anymore. They have lost 9 times in the past 5 years in big tournaments and exhibitions going into those tournaments. The difference you pointed out right there, Joel, is that the rest of the world has really good players. In 1992, there were 9 NBA players on other Olympic teams in Barcelona. This year, there are a record 51 players in the men's tournament who were in the NBA last season. 81 players in this tournament have some NBA experience. Canada is loaded, man. That's a good roster. I mean, you look at it and you're like, oh, wow, I forgot. That dude's Canadian too.
Yeah, they don't even have Andrew Wiggins out there.
No, it was a last-second pivot by the Golden State Warriors, and that was actually on the first day of training camp. So they woke up that morning expecting Wiggins to show up, and then this memo goes out late morning. Oh, by the way, Golden State changed their mind. Andrew Wiggins can't come. But, with Team Canada, yeah, everyone on that team except one, I think, either plays in the NBA or has NBA experience. And with them, it's always been, we didn't really see it till last summer at the World Cup, in the sense that they were finally the sum of their NBA parts. And for a lot of years, they would have all these NBA players, but they just weren't able to put it all together. Whereas the U.S., yeah, it's look, the legacy, the Dream Team had 2 objectives, right? It was one, the rule change that led to the Dream Team had 2 objectives, which was 1, make sure the U.S. never lost a gold medal again, and 2, help grow this game around the world. Now, the more you grow the game around the world, the less the chances are that the U.S. is going to win the gold medal every time out, because again, we got guys from South Sudan who are big and strong and fast and motivated and bouncy, and they just beat Puerto Rico. So this game that they played against the U.S., that was not a fluke. That was not a miracle. That was, again, people who really know how to play ball, regardless of what they don't have. They have 2 things that you need to be good at basketball: height and athleticism.
It helps to have indoor basketball courts.
Right.
Which they don't have in South Sudan. But again, as you guys discussed in the bonus segment last week, the players on this team are the children of or are refugees who grew up in the United States or Canada or elsewhere and have played at high levels. And some of them have NBA experience. And they beat Puerto Rico 90-79. First Olympic basketball win for South Sudan playing in its first Olympics.
Yeah, and I think, kind of pivoting back real quick to the U.S. team, is that I'm sort of surprised. I mean, I knew that LeBron is still a very capable NBA player, and I think he was 3rd team All-NBA this year. I just don't think I expected so much of the team to revolve around him, right? Which seems really worrisome. Like, I mean, it's great that you have 39-year-old Bron to run your offense through. Like, what a luxury, right? But it seems like less of a luxury and more of like a necessity, which I'm like, where? Like, I thought this is why, like, Steph is there, like Tyrese Halliburton is there. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just kind of like, where is the backcourt?
Do you think it's a necessity, or do you think that it's deference to LeBron? As long as we're winning, let's let LeBron be the straw that stirs the drink.
In the South Sudan exhibition, it looked like it happened out of necessity. Like, when the game got into crunch time, they had to run their offense through Bron because they trusted Bron to either be able to get the shot or to get somebody open for a shot. And, like, maybe that will change now that they've got KD, who is, you know, for my money, I mean, he was the best player in the 2020 Olympics. That actually happened in 2021 in Tokyo. And so, like, at least the return of KD may help to, you know, lessen some of the burden on Bron. But it's still just kind of the thing. I'm like, all right, he's still 39 years old. There's still a lot of games. Like, I'm just kind of like, what does that look like as this tournament gets deeper and the competition goes up? That's all. I mean, I'm sure it's not going to be a huge problem, but it's still just something to kind of keep tabs on, because that seems sort of ominous to me a little bit, I guess.
Well, to the point you made earlier on, Joel, like, there just doesn't seem to be much of a succession plan.
Yes.
Because after that first wave of stars, who, again, many of these guys are 34, 35 plus, like, this is what we saw last year in the World Cup. This team that lost the bronze medal match to Canada. They had Tyrese Halliburton, they had Anthony Edwards, but they also had, no disrespect to Austin Reeves, but they had Austin Reeves and, that caliber of players. And so once these old guys really get too old, like, now LeBron might actually show up in LA and he'll be 43. That might actually happen.
Right. They demand that Bronny is on the team.
Well, exactly. But beyond that, again, I don't know what happens. Whereas for a lot of these other teams, you can see where they have 4 years of upside.
Right.
It's Cooper Flag's world, everyone. Cooper Flag, LA, 2028. France won. Wemby, 19-9, 4-3. And the 4 was steals. So, you know, home team at an Olympics, you totally want to see them advance. And Greece, you mentioned at the top of the show, you know, Giannis had 34 in that loss to Canada. Canada might be the second best team in this tournament. I really hope for my compatriots that Greece gets out of the group.
Well, I was going to ask you this, Morgan. So you're the Canadian on the panel. We're going to do this to you over and over again.
Let's do it.
You know, so they haven't medaled since the Nazi games in 36.
Yes.
So, if Canada doesn't medal in this Olympics, would it be seen as a huge disappointment up there?
Among people who care about basketball, yes. And Canada has gotten over this complex in recent Olympic Games, and that's good. But like for a long time ago, when I was growing up, Canadians were just happy to get there, happy to participate, happy to almost qualify for something, right? But what's been happening in Canada every year, if you're a sports reporter, in October, you get a press release from NBA Canada telling you how many Canadians there are in the NBA and how there are more Canadians than people from any other country outside the U.S. So this is one measure. So by this measure, Canada is the second best men's basketball country on the planet, but measured by international results, it has never matched up. And so there was a situation one Olympic Games ago where Canada lost this qualifier at the last second to the Czech Republic. And when I tell you, these guys from the Czech Republic, aside from Tomáš Satoranský, who hit that game-winning shot, they were a bunch of dad bods, man. They had dad bods and neckbeards, and they beat this team full of NBA players, and this just should not happen. And so Canada, on the one hand, can't brag about being the second biggest source of NBA talent on the planet, but on the other hand, sort of try to explain away and rationalize away these international losses. At some point, A has to translate into B. And so I think we're at this point now. And now, again, these aren't just NBA jobbers on this team, right? Mm-hmm. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I think, was second in MVP voting. His cousin, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, like, these are quality NBA players. They get a lot of minutes. These are guys
Barrett.
RJ Barrett.
Joel's favorite player, Dylan Brooks.
These are guys that get big minutes in the NBA.
FIBA Dylan Brooks, low-key, is like FIBA Patty Mills. Like, he's much more effective internationally. He's a different player. He's a different player.
100%. I haven't seen as many people complaining about this as they do the men's soccer team specifically. the fact that so many of these guys are black. And so you get these Canadians, white Canadians that get upset. Where are the white people? The immigrants are taking over. Boo hoo hoo hoo, all this stuff, right? But like Dylan Brooks is very much a black guy. Ken Birch is very much a black guy. But before you complain about them being examples of other people coming and taking over Canada from the white people, like Dylan Brooks and Ken Birch are from Nova Scotia, so their roots in Canada are deeper than anybody else's, including the white guys. These are guys whose families have been in Canada probably since the 1780s. You see what I'm saying? So this team is very Canadian.
So are you saying then, Morgan, that Kelly Olynyk is the most popular Canadian player then? Is that what you said? He carried the flag?
Among some people he might be, but not necessarily among the people that watch a lot of basketball.
In our next segment, Slate contributor Rebecca Schulman on Simone Biles and the first day of competition in women's gymnastics.
If there's one thing sports fans love as much as watching games, it's talking about them, especially the stats. Here's one that's super simple to remember. Discover automatically doubles the cash back on your credit card at the end of your first year with Cash Back Match. That means with Discover, you could turn $150 cash back to $300. That's right. You could put it towards some memorabilia you've had your eye on, or treat yourself to a premium sports network. You earn and Discover doubles. See terms at discover.com/credit card.
This episode is brought to you by SAP. First, the bad news. SAP Business AI won't help you generate cubist versions of your family's holiday photos, but it will help you understand which supplier is best to help you roll out your plant-based packaging in Southeast Asia, identify the training your junior project manager needs to rise up the ranks, and automate repetitive tasks while you focus on big innovations, so you can be ready for the next opportunity. Revolutionary technology, real-world results. That's SAP Business AI.
So it figures that there was going to be at least a little drama in Simone Biles' highly anticipated return to the Olympics. Biles arrived in Paris with lots of fanfare after her disappointing performance in Tokyo in 2021. And early on, it seemed as if Biles might be facing another disappointing showing after tweaking her calf during her warm-up on floor exercise. But Biles shook off the injury to post the top score in the all-around, a gutsy effort that likely erases the memories of those bad old days in Japan. Writing in Slate about the new Netflix docuseries Simone Biles Rising, Rebecca Schulman said, "I've been following her whole career. Her gymnastics and her mental state appear better than they have ever been." Joining us now is Rebecca Schulman, who will be covering gymnastics for Slate during the Paris Games. Welcome back to the show, Rebecca.
So happy to be here once every 4 years, as always. You all look even younger than you did in 2021.
That's not fair. We have you on more than once every 4 years. It's at least 3 or 4 times.
True.
And I know I'm more gray than I was the last time we talked, but I appreciate you saying it. But let's start with what happened Sunday in Paris, Rebecca. Did her performance align with your observation in that piece?
Very much so, because at first, it was a little bit scary because there was a moment where she left the arena to get medical attention, and it was a little bit of a Tokyo flashback because she left the arena then, too, after she had her Twisties episode, and then she didn't come back. And so it was a little bit like, oh my gosh, is she hurt? Is this it? Are we not going to see? Is this it? But she came back. She seemed fine. She beasted through floor routine in a really good mental state. She seemed happy. But then she went to warm up for vault, and her calf still seemed to be bothering her. And there was a moment where she was crawling down the vault runway, and the whole gymnastics world just freaked out. But she was laughing about it. It was just clearly, it looked like a cramp of some sort. I mean, I was a little worried too, but she seemed in really good spirits about it. So I was like, okay, if she's not worried, I'm not worried. And then she went and did her famous double pike vault really well, beasted through it, had a great meet, did a fantastic job, and she looks really unbothered mentally.
Okay, so this is like a real practical question. I want to ask about this injury, which we can see tape around her ankle. What we're hearing is calf injury. And, when you watch the games on NBC, especially, like, all these injuries just become props. Not even characters, just props to use in this story about overcoming adversity. And there's never any thought to whether or not, like, this will actually affect her. But when I hear lower leg injury, like, look how long it took Kevin Durant to come back. Look at the time when Kevin Durant snapped his Achilles tendon in Toronto during the finals after months of battling a lower leg injury. So, Rebecca, like, heartwarming stories about overcoming adversity aside, to what extent should folks actually be concerned about this lower leg injury?
Well, this is a fine line. That's a really important point, because the big overcoming injury story in gymnastics is from way back in 1996 with Carrie Strug, who vaulted on this severely injured leg and is held up as this hero for doing it, when in reality, we look back on it now and we're like, oh my God, that was horrible abuse. She shouldn't have had to do that. That was torture. That child was tortured. And so gymnastics has this reputation of you train injured, you get back out there, you tape it up, and you go back out there. I mean, I was a gymnast for 10 years, and I taped it back up, and I competed on a sprained ankle for an entire season. I mean, I wasn't very good, but still. Like, there is this reputation where you just sort of, pain does not exist in this dojo, and you get back out there. And 3 of the biggest hopefuls for this team actually snapped their Achilles during Olympic trials. Because of this. And this is like new gentle gymnastics where people aren't encouraged to train hurt. They just really wanted to come to the Olympics. So you can be sure that if her coaches say that it's not serious, that it's not serious, and that she cares more about her health than she does about medals. However, there is a line to walk where I'm sure she's thinking, she's already said, this is going to be my last Olympics. I'm retiring after this. I'm not coming back. I barely could make it here. And so I'm also thinking that she's like, well, if this is the last vault I can ever do, I'm going to do it. So yeah, there's a line. And so her coaches, the medical staff, are saying that it's not serious and that it's fine. I am choosing to believe them.
Simone Biles has come to represent an athlete who took charge of an abusive sport. She's going to be remembered for her stance pulling herself out of Tokyo, prioritizing her mental health over the risk of injuring herself physically. She's going to be remembered, along with many other gymnasts, for their bravery in facing up to the sexual abuse scandals that have dominated gymnastics for years. But ultimately, she's an athlete that wants to get a gold medal before she retires. And you're right, Rebecca. I think that that line is, maybe it's not as thin as we see, because Simone Biles, maybe her calf hurts and there's an injury, but there are times in sports where taping it up and gutting it out are okay. And if we have the confidence that A, she's getting the medical treatment she needs, B, that her mental state is such that she would walk away if she really believed that she was putting herself at grave risk, then she would walk away. But yeah, it's the Olympics. Who knows? And she's not necessarily the gold medal lock that I think a lot of people in America might believe she is she?
Yeah, I mean, so there is this wonderful gymnast from Brazil, Rebecca Andrade, who is within, the way that I like to put it, which is factually correct, is that she is within Simone Biles' margin of error. So after qualification, Simone Biles qualified about 1.8 points ahead of Andrade. And when you take a fall in gymnastics, that's a full point. If you have like a big, huge error, that's a half a point. 2 steps out of bounds on floor is 0.3. So I have just like listed what Simone could do to lose this if Andrade has a good meet. So Andrade also has some secret difficulty that she can pull out that she has not done in front of cameras yet. But she's submitted some new skills to be evaluated in case she does do them, that she can get them named. I don't think that there's a huge realistic chance that she's going to do that because, again, she has torn her ACL 3 times. And I think that, yes, it is the Olympics, and yes, adrenaline does mask a lot of pain. But again, no one's out here trying to die. To what you were saying before, Stefan, I think it's really important to see that Simone Biles has shown everybody that she knows when she is hurt enough not to compete, like she was in Tokyo, and she knows when she's able to beast it through. And she has shown everybody, look, I'm not a quitter. I can tape my leg up and get back there when I know I'm going to be okay. If she had done that in Tokyo, she would have fallen on her neck on international TV and been paralyzed in front of the entire world. So I think it's also really good for her to show people what that line is for her in front of everybody. But back to Andrade, yes. So she's really good. She is better than Simone on one particular vault. It's the second hardest vault being competed in the world right now. It's called the Chung, and hers is just happens to fly higher and be stuck better. It's better. So then Simone has this double pike that she does that's worth a huge amount, that even if she falls on it, she can still probably win the gold medal. But if Andrade brings out this triple twist that she might or might not do, it's going to be a thrilling matchup. It's going to be a thrilling matchup. But yeah, people are going to be surprised that, usually when Simone is on, she'll win by 3 points, 4 points, 5. But if she wins this one, it's going to be by like less than a point or maybe 1.5 if she has a great meet. And Andrade, basically, both of them are such powerful tumblers that they both tend to go out of bounds a lot. And it may come down to who goes out of bounds more.
Rebecca, as I mentioned in the intro, you wrote about Simone's Netflix series, the Simone Biles Rising. And you mentioned in there that the camera crew, and I can confirm, I watched it yesterday, caught an incredible amount of like audio and video. Like it was really revealing. And so there's obviously been in recent years, especially there's sort of been a proliferation of these sort of, documentaries or behind the scenes series or whatever around athletes. But it really did feel revelatory. So like what most struck you about the series? And I'll tell you what struck me the most, because I thought her husband kind of got a raw deal like over the last couple of years, right? And I really thought that he was sort of a lovely guy. Like I thought of him as really supportive and everything. But what did you take from it?
Yeah, facts. Her husband is definitely Jonathan Owens. He has a name. He's not. He's not Mr.
just
Biles.
Husband. Right.
But yeah, he clearly was like, the first thing I want to do in our new house is put your Vogue cover in the biggest possible blowout. Like he is clearly number one Simone stan of the entire universe. He got release from training camp to go to the Olympics, which is really rare. I mean, one might say it's because he's on the special team and blah blah. I won't go that way. But
No. Let me interrupt. If you're on the special teams, you're fighting for a roster spot. They do not let you out of training camp.
Yes.
Yeah,
to go watch
guess that's true.
Your wife do her job.
That's true. But yeah, he went on a podcast and just made, I think the podcast was about mental health, and it was about how Simone sort of encouraged him to go to therapy. He was very vulnerable about how he like holds her while she cries every night, and he goes to therapy too. And so I think he had to balance that vulnerability out because he's a man in a very manly sport. And so he was with this like testosterone filled podcast, and they said, well, how'd you pull Simone Biles? And so I think he wanted to be like, no, Simone Biles pulled me. It was just this moment where he had to have some possibly itty bitty amounts of toxic masculinity to balance out the vulnerability. But that's the soundbite that got pulled. And so to this day, everyone's like, he's Mr. Simone Biles. No one knows who he is. So I actually think I agree with you, Joel, that the most revealing part of this documentary, other than the part that I really didn't think it was about gymnastics at all. I thought it was about mental health. But I thought that Jonathan's utter sweetness and support of her and just how blissfully happy they are together and what a healthy relationship they seem to have was also very revealing. And maybe it will make people stop saying, Mr. Biles, that's Mr. Simone Biles, that's his government name.
And you get to see her in the docuseries. You get to see her at a Packers game, and she says, "Oh, look at their little chant, go Pack, go!" Like, I mean, it's very adorable in a lot of ways. So,
Simone Biles, as we've discussed, has sort of been on a campaign to kind of normalize gymnastics and pull it out of the abuse era. And Rebecca, you noted in the piece that posted on Sunday night after the qualifiers that the U.S. team kind of seems normaler. They're eating pizza and making TikToks and hanging out in the Olympic Village. They're not isolated. And then on Monday morning, I read Juliet McClure's profile of Suni Lee, the defending gold medalist, in the New York Times, and it brought me back to this terror of what gymnastics can be for these young women. I mean, Suni Lee was a girl when she won the gold medal 4 years ago, and those 4 years have been not stable and not easy. It was kind of a terrifying reminder of just how crushing this sport can be physically, mentally, emotionally.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for Suni, it's also a really special situation because not only did she have a really unpleasant college experience, as you read about, she felt like she was just under a microscope at Auburn. She felt unsafe to go to class because she just felt like people were watching her.
There were stalkers.
Yeah. And then she also felt like her teammates were jerks to her, which is bananas because she put that team on the map. Like, that team was not a national championships contender without her. And the only reason she even went to that team is because her beloved coach's literal identical twin brother is the coach of that team. And he recruited her from a really young age. And so she basically did it out of love for Jess Graba, her regular coach. But yeah, then in the midst of all of this, she wakes up one day and she's so bloated that she doesn't recognize herself and she can't put on her grips and she can't practice. And it turns out that she has not one but two chronic, debilitating, incurable, permanent kidney conditions. She hasn't disclosed their names because her diagnosis is ever evolving. Also, it's her business. But a year ago, she was like puffy, unrecognizable, could not do gymnastics at all, probably on like dialysis steroids. Who knows what they do for kidney failure, but she was not in the gym working out like everybody else was. And just the simple fact that she has beasted back from that and made an Olympic team, qualified third in the all-around behind Andrade and Simone only. It's miraculous. Like, people talk about Simone coming back from what happened in Tokyo, Lee coming back. That's the comeback of the century. Like, I've never seen anybody come from like possibly dying to Olympic gymnastics. Like, gymnastics, you have to train 6 to 8 hours. Like, you cannot just like do gymnastics as a hobby and then come to the Olympics. It's a 30-hour-a-week commitment, and she was not being able to put in those hours. And somehow she managed to come back and do it. Like, I don't know how she did it. I honestly don't.
That's Rebecca Schulman, who I promise will be back on the show before the 2028 games in LA. And she's covering gymnastics for Slate right now. Thanks again for joining us, Rebecca.
Thank you.
In our next segment, our friend Morgan answers for his homeland's cheating-ass women's soccer team.
This podcast is brought to you by Slate Studios and SAP. AI is moving so fast. If you don't get reliable and relevant advice, your business might miss out. Welcome to Dear Artie, an advice column from SAP, where we tackle the tricky questions at the intersection of AI and business. Let's meet our expert.
Hi, I'm Ian Khan. I'm a technology futurist, speaker, and author, and I love to help organizations measure their current state of readiness for an AI-driven world. I'm excited to dive into today's question.
Dear Artie, our finance team is top-notch, but small. How can AI support them? Signed, Financially Drained.
Well, financially drained, a lot is happening in finance and AI, and the possibilities are endless. First of all, AI can help your finance team analyze massive amounts of financial data faster than any human or a team of people could do. Second, it can help perform functions on data through algorithms. This can connect different systems together and really simplify decision-making for your finance team. And last but not least, AI can help reduce the time needed for data to provide insights so that your leaders can make faster decisions.
Embrace AI with confidence. Head to sap.com/AI to learn more.
It's been a 3-year wait, but the Olympics are back, and the CBS Sports Podcast Network has you covered with everything happening in Paris. It's a new era for the U.S. women's national team, and Attacking Third will tackle all the women's soccer action. First Cut will keep close tabs on golf, while Beyond the Arc will follow the U.S. men's basketball team on a quest for another gold. And We Need to Talk Now will provide comprehensive coverage of women's athletes at the Olympic Games. Follow and listen to all CBS Sports podcasts for free on the Odyssey app and wherever you get your podcasts.
The Canadian women's soccer team had a week. 2 of its staff members were caught using a drone to spy on a practice of the team's first Olympics opponent, New Zealand. Its head coach sat out that game, was sent home, and was then suspended for a year. And then FIFA docked Canada 6 points in the tournament standings, the equivalent of 2 wins. Now, though, the team is scripting a revenge/motivation story after beating the Kiwis 2-1 and then upsetting France on Sunday, also 2-1 on a goal in the 13th minute of stoppage time. Canada actually has a chance to advance to knockout play with a win in its final group stage game against Colombia on Wednesday. Morgan.
Yes.
Our Canadian. I thought you were all fleece and maple syrup and politeness. You are here to defend your country's honor. What do you make of Spygate? Spygate. I'm trying to make it Canadian. It's hard.
Here's where it becomes like overwhelmingly Canadian to me. The parallel that most Canadians draw to this is Ben Johnson testing positive after winning 100-meter gold in
that is a terrible analogy, but go ahead. Go on.
Ooh. No, but this is, I'm telling you the parallel that Canadians draw. And the upshot of that, one of the consequences was that Canada went all in to investigate systemic doping, not even systemic doping, just widespread doping, because it wasn't like Russian doping. And what we learned about that era was that a lot of people in a lot of different countries were doping, but only the Canadian got caught. And so when this news broke, there was a lot of talk about how this reminded people of 1988. I think the big difference, though, is that steroids work and drone spying obviously doesn't. Because if drone spying made a difference, Canada would not have gone out there and won its first 2 games, including one over France. So these guys here, with drones everywhere, now we're learning that the men's team was using drones too. And I'm going to need someone who knows more about soccer than I do to explain to me how sending a drone to somebody's practice to record surreptitiously, but not to, because if the drone gets close enough to where it can pick up audio, the other team's going to see the drone and then your advantage is gone. But how that helps a soccer team, because based on the results we've seen from Team Canada since then, with no drones, they're doing fine, which means they probably didn't need the drones, which means these people got their team penalized, got themselves sanctioned for no reason, except that they were paranoid and thought this would help. But clearly it doesn't help that much. So this is where Canadians are sort of stuck, because Canadians also think of ourselves as like just and fair people. So when we find out that our team is cheating, we're not going to, for the most part, Canadians aren't going to rationalize about it. They're just going to mope and wring their hands and hope that other countries get caught doing it too. But again, the competitive advantage has never been made clear to me. And again, you know, we've all been in competitive sports. Every now and then, like an NFL team or a college team, they'll get their playbook leaked online and everyone's saying, oh my gosh, their plays, they're public. People can see their plays, but people can see their plays anyway because they watch the all 22 film. Like nobody has a play or in soccer a set piece that isn't diagrammed someplace. So I just never knew what they were getting from drones. But if you are paranoid and reckless enough to fly a drone, then you deserve what happens to you. I do feel bad for the players, but like these coaches, zero, I think, overstates how much sympathy I have for them in this situation. Hope that helps, Stefan.
Well, you know, I find the comparison to Ben Johnson interesting, right? Because there was a 30 for 30, the 979.
Yes.
On Ben Johnson. And one of the things that came out of that was that pretty much everybody else that was in that final tested positive for PEDs or later did. Maybe not in that race, but at some point in their careers. And it's also interesting because, I mean, Canada's track team hasn't been nearly as internationally competitive. Is that fair?
No,
since '88, they haven't produced.
They have waves. So like '96, Donovan Bailey won, and the men won the relay, and then there was nothing for a while, and then like Perdita, my wife, she won Worlds in 2003.
Oh wow!
And then there was nothing for a while. But the last couple of years, Olympics, World Championships, Canada's kind of taken advantage of this cohort of talent, like across
the grass, right? Yeah, he's up in there, right. So,
but there was a long fallow period after Ben Johnson for sure.
Right, it took a while, right?
And then another one after Donovan Bailey.
Right. So people who regularly listen to this show know that I don't get all that worked up about that sort of gamesmanship. And it's not just because I'm a fan of the Houston Astros. It's possible, like you said, Morgan, that this stuff matters on the margins. But ultimately, like, you can use videotape. There's all sorts of ways, like you said, like Canada has won its two most recent matches. So how much does it help? But like, how does it feel to be the University of Michigan, especially as a Northwestern grad? Because isn't this not what they were saying? Well, other people are probably doing that too. Well, the players aren't responsible, and we still won. So it's evidence that we did not cheat. And it's still like, okay, but like, you did it. And everybody knew, like, that's the thing. Like, how could you all be so bad at cheating that everybody already kind of were on the lookout for you guys and you still got caught? You know what I mean?
Everybody kind of knew they were doing it when it was happening.
Yes.
Sam Borden of ESPN reported that U.S. soccer officials knew Canada was doing this at previous tournaments involving the men's team, not just the women's team. But they didn't do anything because, they're co-hosting the World Cup in 2026. They need to get along. Canada's gotten better on the men's side. They're in the same region. And they just let it slide because they felt like, wasn't worth it. To answer your question, though, Morgan, why these coaches in their had this misguided belief that this was important, because as coaches, you delude yourself into believing that everything is important, right? Recording someone's practice, as Bill Belichick can attest, might give you a little bit of information that you didn't have otherwise, whether that is how they set up on a free kick, or maybe they're structuring some interesting play for a free kick, or something to do with penalty kicks. Or if you're recording the walkthroughs, you get a sense of who's going to be in the starting lineup a little bit in advance, or whether someone might look like they're injured or struggling, or where someone might play out of position. There are reasons that you can talk yourself into believing that this is useful. Whether it is, who knows? It's just a little bit of information. What's interesting to me is the extent to which this was embedded in Canadian soccer's program. I mean, we're talking about CONCACAF tournaments and World Cup qualifiers and the Copa America that just finished, where Canada made it to the semifinals, and everyone is incredibly impressed with the progress that the team has made. Did having drones attempt to record practices of opponents help the Canadian men's team make it to the semifinals of the Copa America? I doubt it, but it does show that something rotten was going on with either the current coaches or the previous coach. One of the previous head coaches in the Canadian program coached the men and the women at different times.
John Herdman.
And it does put the players in this terrible position, Morgan, right? And that, I think, is the story here. A lot of players, including former superstar Christine Sinclair, who's retired, have been very much defending the players and the honor of the team. But another former national team player, Amy Walsh, said something that I think really gets it right. She said the players are benefiting from the coaches cheating. There's a certain amount of blind trust players have that coaches are doing things the right way, and this is the ultimate betrayal. That is the story here. And what we're seeing now, Morgan, is how the players are trying to use this as fuel for the Olympic tournament.
Yeah, well, because one, like the brazenness of this scheme is almost impressive. Everyone knows there's a no drone rule in Paris right now. And this guy still goes out and flies the drone. And two, these assistant coaches tried to tell us that like none of this information was being fed up the food chain to Bev Priestman, the head coach, which defies logic, because what can two assistant coaches even do with this information that doesn't have to go through the head coach? But the other thing that's happening, here in Canada especially, is that there's been so much goodwill around the senior men's and senior women's soccer teams for all these years, especially on the women's side, because they're been better for
Olympic
longer.
Champions, Morgan.
Right.
They're the defending Olympic champions.
Not just that they won in Tokyo, is that they had a couple of Olympic cycles where they were knocking on the door. And there's a sense of aggrievedness in Canada. People still remember the 2012 semifinal when Canada lost to England and Canadians felt they were jobbed by the referees. Right. And so now Canada, on the one hand, in terms of women's soccer, like Canadians have been the ones who have suffered injustice. This is how Canadians see themselves and their soccer team. So now to find out that the coaches are perpetrating this injustice is really shocking. But it is interesting that like this tactic seems to have spanned teams and coaches and regimes. John Herdman has moved on. He moved on to the men's team, got them to the World Cup, or Alphonso Davies et al. Brought John Herdman to the World Cup. And now John Herdman is with Toronto FC and not doing very well. Like that team is at the bottom of the table. And so for Canada, again, it's they went from aggrieved to aggrievers very quickly. That's a sharp turn. That's jarring. So I don't know how people are going to process this. And the other thing that's happening in Canada too is that the players and the federation and then the entity that does business on behalf of the federation are it's like a triple threat match in wrestling. It's one versus the other in every direction. So what has happened in Canada, and a lot of this blew up around the men's World Cup. Like Canada was the one team heading into the 2022 World Cup that didn't get a brand new uniform from Nike. So everybody else had brand new uniforms for the World Cup. Canada had the qualifying kit. But also what has happened in Canada, and this kind of speaks more directly to what's happening here, because, Team Canada now, they have to pay this fine. And now the government is saying, the federal government is saying, we're going to withhold funding from Soccer Canada because of this. But Soccer Canada does not have a lot of money, even though Canada is a wealthy nation, because Soccer Canada went into business with an entity called Canada Soccer Business. Okay. So Canada Soccer Business does business on behalf of Soccer Canada, but they are not Soccer Canada. So one of the big elements of this deal they had was that Canada Soccer gets a flat fee from broadcast rights. That's fixed. But for all these years leading up to the World Cup, the value of the broadcast rights went up. And so they would sell broadcast rights to national broadcasters, or they would keep these rights and put these games essentially on pay-per-view or on a channel that Canada Soccer Business owned. Okay. So Canada Soccer is getting this flat fee. The value of these broadcast rights are skyrocketing, and Canada Soccer is not getting any of the benefit from this. And then Canada Soccer Business is taking this money and using it to run a domestic league, the Canadian Premier League. And so as much commercial power as Canadian men's and women's senior soccer teams have kind of accrued over the years that they've been improving, they have not seen much of the financial benefit from that because of this really restrictive relationship that the federation struck with this business entity. And so now the federal government says, we are cutting your funding. So that's even less money to run these programs, which is only going to make this three-way rivalry between the federation, the players, and Canada Soccer Business that much more bitter.
Yeah, I mean, that is really interesting. I did not know that it was divvied up like this. Also, I didn't know that there was a Canadian Premier League, Morgan. That's really interesting to me. I'd love to go see that. I was watching CFL on TV just the other day. But anyway, I mean, the thing about this is that sort of struck me, though, is that, man, FIFA is really unforgiving, man. You know what I mean? Like, yes. The NFL or the Big Ten, like, I mean, they were just kind of like, well, ain't much we could really do about it, bro. You know what I mean? Like it already happened. But it does make a lot of sense to me in some ways, is that like more people care about international soccer and they have to figure out a way to discourage this kind of behavior. But like, if Canada wins out of this, or they somehow emerge or, medal as a result of this, I do wonder if the punishments may become even more severe going forward, right? Because this, what you don't want is to inspire a team, right? And then a team you don't want Canada on the medal stand acting as if they're the aggrieved party here, which kind of seems like
which is exactly what's going to happen.
What's going on, right?
Yeah,
Players are saying they treated us like we're dopers.
Yes.
Yeah.
And every time, because this happened at my alma mater, Northwestern, last year, where people not even allegedly were bullying. This was investigated, vetted, found out people were bullying. They got around to filing the coach. And then, what was the rallying cry for the whole season? Oh, it's us against the world. Everybody's picking on us. Like, no, you're Northwestern. Nobody really, and I say this as a Northwestern grad, nobody really cares about Northwestern that is not directly tied to Northwestern. No, it's not the world against you, but this is something people use to rally around. And Canada's women's soccer team is going to be the same thing. Again, it's this rallying around the sense of aggrievedness when nobody's picking on you. The coaches were cheating. Very straightforward.
And they do have a chance now to get out of their group, despite being docked the points from effectively their first 2 wins. So this is shaping up as an Olympic storyline to watch. That is all for this episode, but we've also got a bonus episode right now that is live. We'll talk about the Olympics opening ceremony and more from the first days of competition. To hear that, subscribe to Slate Plus on Apple Podcasts by clicking Try Free at the top of our show page, or visit slate.com/hangup plus to get access wherever you listen. The episode is available right now. We will see you there. Our show notes are at slate.com/hangup, and you can email us at hangup@slate.com. And don't forget to follow the show and rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Our producer is Kevin Bendis. Morgan Campbell, thank you so much for coming on the show again this week.
Listen, it's always a pleasure to be here and bring my freezing cold takes from north of the border. Balance out the anti-Canadian coverage because you guys are picking on our team just because we cheated.
For Joel Anderson, I am Stefan Fatsis. Remember Zelmo Beatty, and thanks for listening.